Hello, my name is Lonnie and welcome to my channel. Today I am talking about some books I've been reading and then some books I'm planning on reading. I feel like after reading a book, you want to talk about it to someone, especially someone who's read the book before, but I just want to talk about the books. I'm not doing any spoilers or anything. I am a pretty new reader. I've dabbled in reading before, but now I've been more recently getting into it because I have a lot of free time. I also have a Kindle and that's been helping me read a lot. So most of the books I've read, I don't have the physical copy. Actually, all of the books I'm going to talk about, I do not have the physical copy. I read it on my Kindle. But yeah, I think let's get into it. I have this journal. I got it on Amazon a while ago and it's like a little reading log, and then I can write my little reviews and like summaries in it. Pretty cool. And then all like the books I've read and their genre. So like I'm gonna be referencing this a lot. I also write notes on my phone because I'm not gonna pull out this and a pen wherever I am. So I type notes on my phone when I think of something about the book. I'm not really good at annotating. I've tried annotating before, but it feels weird leaving my little thoughts on the side of the book. So I just put them on my phone and then I sometimes underline in a book. On the Kindle, it's really easy to underline. So the first book I'm going to talk about is A Court of Thorns and Roses, ACOTAR. It's kind of funny because I've heard a ton of people talk about ACOTAR, and every time they said ACOTAR series, I thought like the name of the place was ACOTAR, but I don't think it was until after I finished reading the book and then I started watching reading vlogs just so I could still place myself in their world. I realized ACOTAR stands for A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that makes a lot more sense. So A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. It was really good and I really enjoyed it. So this book is about a girl named Fair, and she lives in a mortal world. And then there's this wall that separates them from Prythian, I believe that's how you say it. And it is a land of fairies. They're like mystical creatures, basically, with magic. So there's a split between mortals and fairies. And Fair, she ends up killing a wolf in the first chapter, which actually turns out to be a fairy. And then as a punishment, she gets taken into Prythian as the only mortal there, basically, and she goes through living there. There's a romance and she falls in love. There's a lot of action at the end. I really love the world that they lived in. A lot of people don't enjoy the first book. I found myself for the first half of the book, I was kind of just skimming through it. It's a lot of world building. There's a lot of specifics that go into their world, so you have to pay attention to those, and it gets kind of boring. So the first half, it was kind of boring to me. But then halfway through the book, they spit out a whole bunch of information explaining more specifics about the world. And it all makes sense eventually. I don't like how there's just like this one chapter where they just explain everything. They didn't make it gradual or anything. There's just a lot of information at once. I remember I was reading it on the plane and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of things going on. But it all made sense. I think this book was a great setup for the series. You could tell, even though this book probably wasn't amazing, you could just tell the whole series will be amazing. So this book, I gave it I'd say a 4 out of 5 stars. Barely a 4. I was thinking about like 3.75. Like I feel like it wasn't at a 4 yet. Just because for the first half of the book I was skimming through it, but the second half it really grabbed me, and I remember once I reached the second half of the book, I was reading through it pretty fast. But yeah, so even though I didn't rate this book specifically the highest, I could just tell it is a 5-star series. The next book that I read is Daisy Haites. This is the second book in the Magnolia Parks universe. I really loved reading Magnolia Parks, so I was looking forward to reading this book. So when going into Daisy Haites, it was about completely new characters. I mean, we knew these characters from the first book, but we didn't know much about them. So in Daisy Haites, I believe there's 3 different, it's been a while since I read it, or not, it's been like a month since I read it. But there are 3 different point of views. There's Daisy's point of view, Christian's point of view, and then also Julian's point of view. I love having all these different point of views. When I first started reading this book, I wasn't that in love with it just because I was so in love with Magnolia Parks and the characters, and I was so used to seeing everything from Magnolia and BJ's point of view that adjusting to Daisy and Christian's point of view was a little bit rough for me. There was a lot of mystery about Daisy in the beginning. Like, we didn't know where she came from, why she was the way she was. She's a very strong girl. But then eventually we started slowly figuring it out. And I'd say 30% into the book is when I really started to realize that I really love this book. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And I honestly think I liked it better than Magnolia Parks. I liked it because there was so much more. There's more action, there's a lot more on the line. So it goes through the same exact story or same exact timeline as Magnolia Parks, except that they are seen from a different point of view and they're doing their own thing. You see everything from their lives. You get to see what Daisy thinks, what Christian thinks. There's a part where Magnolia and Daisy interact, and then you see it from Magnolia's point of view when reading Magnolia Parks, and then you see it from Daisy's point of view when reading Daisy Haites, and I think that's really cool. Just seeing how we formed opinions about the characters while reading Magnolia Parks, but now my point of view has changed since reading Daisy Haites. So yeah, everyone knows that Magnolia Parks is not a typical romance though. If someone is watching this, if anyone watches this, and they're thinking about reading Magnolia Parks, it's really hard to describe the way the book is. You either love it or hate it. It is not a typical romance, and I think that's why I like it, because I'm not so much of a romance lover. Like, I don't like the cheesy romances that much. So that's why I really like this one, because it's a little different. You don't know what to expect. So it's hard to figure out what exactly the book is about until you read it. The next book that I read is A Court of Mist and Fury. This is the second book of the ACOTAR series. So I was really excited to read this book because I wanted to get back into the world that they live in. So this book, I'm going to say right away, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. The reason why it wasn't a 5 is because there were some parts of it where I was just kind of confused or kind of bored. So right after reading ACOTAR, I wanted to look up a bunch of YouTube videos about the book just so I can keep living in that world and keep being in their story. So while watching those videos, even though they were labeled not spoiled, things got spoiled for me. It's a very big thing. A lot of people know about it already. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to do the same thing to anyone that ever watches this. The spoiler kind of ruined the first beginning of the book because I knew it was going to happen, so it was kind of boring to me. In this book, a lot of changes in Fair's life. Fair's. A lot of changes happens in her life, and I don't know, I don't want to say too much because I feel like I'm going to spoil it. Anyways, you're introduced to a whole nother section of the world that they live in, and I feel like it's so beautiful and it makes you want to go there. Okay, I'm not going to say too much about this book because I don't want to create the same spoiler, even though I feel like most people know about this. But I really like going into books blind, so I want other people to have that same experience. So I'm not going to say too much about this book, just that it is a slow burn book and I really liked it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'm excited to read the next book. Okay. I have 2 more books that I'm going to talk about. Right after finishing A Court of Mist and Fury, I was on the airplane and I didn't have my next book lined up on my Kindle. I had a few downloads of random books, and after reading A Court of Mist and Fury, and it's a big fantasy, I wanted something really easy to read. I kind of wanted a romance to read, or just like a cute little book, like where it's just like rainbows and sunshine. Like that's what I was looking for. I just wanted an easy read, but I did not have any of those downloaded on my Kindle already. But one book that I had downloaded was If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nowlin. And I think this is a young adult romance, and it was a very easy read, but it got very deep. It's a very deep book. So If He Had Been With Me is about Autumn and her childhood best friend Finney, and it is a coming of age story of how they grew up together, how they were best friends, but slowly they grew apart. They were in different social groups in middle school, I believe, and then in high school they were completely separated. But their moms are best friends. They're like family to each other, so they celebrate like birthdays together, they celebrate holidays together. They're basically family, so they still do a lot together, but they're no longer best friends and barely even friends. The story is told in Autumn's point of view and how she is growing up, the friends she is with. She gets a boyfriend in high school, and a lot of things happen. It's a very relatable book, especially to me. I found it very relatable. All the things that we go through in high school, growing up, figuring things out, even in college, it was relatable to me. And the book starts out very strong. It starts out with a car accident, but we don't know exactly what happens. It's no hidden story that there's a car accident, but we don't know what happens. And it takes you from the past and then until that moment. And yeah, I thought the book was really good. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It really made me feel something. So yeah. The last book I'm going to be talking about, it is the book that everyone is reading right now. I actually just finished it yesterday. It is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And this was an amazing book and I really loved it. Actually last year, I believe, or the year before, I read Book Lovers and Beach Read, but I was reading it during a time where I was just starting to get into reading. I think it was like one of the first books I picked up. It's because I knew everyone was talking about it. I kept seeing the cover, so I was like, I'm just gonna read this. I assume it's going to be easy to read. And yeah, it was just like a regular romance to me. Pretty simple to read. But the thing is that I hadn't been reading that much during that time, so I wasn't really able to compare it to very much. I enjoyed the book, but I didn't love it. I feel like people love those books, but they were just like regular romances to me. But then when reading Happy Place, while watching a bunch of people talk about their experience of reading their book, they talked about how Emily Henry's writing has improved a lot. They talk about it not only being a romance, but also a literary fiction. I had to say that slowly because it's kind of hard to say. But this book was beautifully written. A lot of people say that they feel like Emily Henry thought out every single sentence she wrote in that book, and I think I would agree with them. So this book I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars because it really made me feel something. It was a romance, but not just a regular romance. There was a lot of emotion into it. This book is about Harriet, and it's written in her point of view and how she goes to her happy place, which is this little beach home cottage thing that is in Maine, and all of her friends go to it every year since they were in college. And it is about their friend group, but Harriet has been with her fiance for 10 years, but they actually broke up. And she goes to this beach house and he ends up being there too because he's part of the friend group. They haven't been talking for months, but they also haven't told their friends that they broke up. So they are trying to pretend that they're still together. We get taken through their past and how they got together and how their friend group developed, and then also the present of what they're feeling, what they went through. There's a lot of development in these characters. I love their friend group and how close-knit they were and how they were very witty. They were very funny to each other. I love their banter between all the characters. But the main story is about Harriet and her ex-fiance, Win, and everything they go through. It takes you through a lot of emotion. I really like this book because it talks about friendships and how friendships change, but that also does not mean that you have to lose your friends. Especially since I am freshly out of college, friendship is changing for me, because I used to be in a school full of people that could potentially be my friends, and then I also had my friends living down the street from me. They were always there. But now we're all separated. Things are changing, and their experience in this book very strongly portrays what it's like to grow up, what it's like to go into the adult world. It's not just a coming age from high school, but it is like you're getting older, you're getting new jobs, you're getting families, you're getting married. Things are changing. But that doesn't mean the change has to be in a bad way. They make the best out of their changes. So this book was a lot about their friends being in a happy place. It's full of heartwarming things, but also heartbreaking things. And I think that's what made the book so good. So if you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend reading it. All right, so now I am going to talk about my TBR, the books that I am planning to read. The first book is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I have a physical copy of this book. I haven't read a physical copy of a book in a while. I love this cover. This cover is so cute, and I saw it every time at Target, and I've heard people talking about it, so then I made my husband buy it for me. And shopping for books at Target is definitely worth it, because most of the books there are 20 to 30% off. They always have the little sticker on there, so it makes it a lot cheaper. But this book is about, I started it a little bit. It is about Macy, and she is a pediatrics resident, but she runs into her childhood friend, Love, Elliot. He was her next door neighbor when they were kids. I just started it, so we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. It has been a nice, simple read so far, and it feels good to hold an actual book. And this is well made because of how floppy and beautiful it is, and it's so cute. But yeah, and the two characters, they share a bond about loving books. And it just made me think that I swear every romance that I've read, they always love reading. They have a love for reading. And I believe that is the author always putting in their own personalities into their characters, because obviously the author loves to read. So I swear every character loves reading. I would like to see, or I would like to read other books where they don't only love reading. I personally am into fitness and exercising a lot. I would love to see a character like that. I don't know, that was a random thought. The other books that I plan to read, I have physical copies of books. I've had this one for a while. I actually started it, but this is kind of random. But I've never read the Harry Potter series as a kid, so I started reading it a couple years ago. I haven't read Harry Potter in a while, and I'm on book 5, and I know it's every person's dream to read Harry Potter for their first time again, and I get to do that. I get to do it as an adult. This is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I read it in I think January. I only got 40 pages in. It's good. It's Harry Potter. It transfers you into a magical world. I don't know the books that well, I've only read it once, but I know I love book 4. I loved it because the plot twists, crazy, everything. And it's really fun to just read this. Even though it is technically a child's book, it's written so well that anyone could enjoy it. And I love that I get to experience it for the first time. Okay, the next book I got a couple months ago, and I actually talked about it in my birthday vlog, but it is Pandora by Susan Stokes Chapman. And I have no idea what it's about. I'm very bad at reading the backs of books, because I swear every time I read the back of a book, I never process what it's saying. But I bought this book, honestly, because the cover is beautiful, and I wanted a single novel, not a series, because I don't like getting into a bunch of series at the same time. So I'm reading 2 series right now. Magnolia Parks and Akatar. So I want to finish those series before I start another one. So that is a good novel to read. So the other books that I want to read that I don't have with me, that I will probably just download on my Kindle. I love using my Kindle because it's so easy to read off it, and if it's a giant book, it's not very intimidating. So speaking of giant books, the next book I am planning to read, what is it called? A Court of Wings and Ruin. I believe that is the biggest book in the ACOTAR series. I'm not sure, but it is a pretty large book. I know that for sure. And I'm going to read that on my Kindle eventually. Just take me back to the ACOTAR world. I'm excited. And then the other series, Magnolia Parks, I'm going to read Magnolia Parks A Long Way Home. I am taking my time with that series because I love their world so much. I definitely would want to reread those books because I know there are a bunch of hints and clues as the book goes on. So I want to reread those books. I'll probably one day get the physical copy of the books and then reread them, and I'd love to underline them and annotate them. Because I love those. Another book that I eventually want to read is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I've seen a lot of booktubers read it or talk about it. I always see it at Target. So eventually I plan on reading that. It's another fantasy book, a series, and yeah. The last book that's on my TBR is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I believe it's about you go to a coffee shop and while you're drinking your coffee, you travel back in time or you travel to another place and you can only be there until the coffee gets cold. I don't know if that's correct, but I think it's something like that. I believe it's one of those books where it's going to make me really reflect, think about life a little bit. I don't know too much about the books that I'm planning on reading. I like to go into books very blind and not knowing what's gonna happen. I like being taken by surprise, not knowing what's gonna happen in the plot twists. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you for listening to me. If anyone watches this, please give me recommendations or tell me what you think about the books that I was talking about, and don't give me any spoilers because I like to go into books very blind. But thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.